From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Good Sunday morning. We are a few days into early voting for Georgia's next statewide election, and there has already been a big development, a ballot shakeup.
That's right. So Daniel Blackman says that he'll appeal the Georgia Secretary of State's decision that removed him from the race for a seat on the Public Service Commission.
But Blackman, at least for now, will remain on the ballot, despite Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's decision earlier this week to disqualify him from the race after a Fulton County judge temporarily paused enforcement of Raffensperger's move.
He's one of several Democrats running in the June 17th statewide primary, hoping to advance to the general election in November. The challenge to Blackman's candidacy is because of where he lives. So the District 3 seat on the PSC includes Fulton, DeKalb, and Clayton counties. The ruling says Blackman has not lived in Fulton County long enough. Well, Blackman's name is still on the ballot because early voting began on Tuesday before the Secretary of State's ruling came down. Now, if he does lose his appeal, polling places will notify voters of Blackman's disqualification. Well, there are two contested primaries on July 17th. If Blackman loses his appeal, then 3 Democrats will face off in District 3. The winner would face Republican incumbent Fitz Johnson. There's also one contested Republican primary, as the District 2 Republican incumbent Tim Echols faces a primary challenge from Lee Munns.
Senator Jon Ossoff is up for re-election next year, and 2 major Georgia Republicans are already lining up to challenge him. One of those contenders is John King, a military veteran and former law enforcement officer who currently serves as the state's insurance commissioner, who sat for an interview with us earlier this week. And we began our conversation with Governor Brian Kemp's top legislative priority this year, tort reform, which was signed into law recently. Detractors said it would prevent some people who are hurt from recovering all they deserve in court, while some supporters argued it would prevent frivolous lawsuits and lower insurance premiums. Will tort reform lower Georgians' insurance premiums?
A typical politician would say certainly, but I'm not a typical politician. It will stabilize the rates. And I will now hold insurance. I now have an extra tool in the toolkit to hold insurance companies accountable.
Why do you want to be Georgia's next senator?
I will tell you, I see this vacuum of leadership in Washington, D.C. And it reminds me of my call to duty when I became an Atlanta police officer. There used to be this recruiting poster with the Atlanta Police Department that said, you can complain about what's wrong in the world, or you can do something about it. Georgia deserves a senator that reflects the values, the interests, that can address the fears that Georgians have. Not a senator that will do what's politically expedient.
From where you sit right now, what do you think is the biggest issue facing Georgia?
The economy. Absolutely the economy. The amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that we have at the national level, that everybody's just been looking the other way. People continue to kick the can down the road.
How do you fix it?
Doing a lot of the things that we've been doing in Georgia. Letting people keep money in their pocket as much as we can. Minimizing the size of government. The states can do a great deal in support of this. When bureaucracies and governments are closest to the people, we become a lot more reflective and reactive to the realities on the ground. And I think there's room there to let the states innovate a great deal. We've been very successful in Georgia in innovating and bringing common sense. And the key word is common sense.
When you look at the party and when you look at yourself as a politician, do you see yourself more as a Trump Republican or a Kemp Republican?
Great question. I really see myself as, I've been incredibly close and supportive of Governor Kemp. I mean, he appointed me and helped me get elected. I mean, I owe a debt to Governor Kemp, forever. And I'll come from that tribe where we honor those. But I also was the co-chair for President Trump's re-election. So I'm one of the few politicians that could actually navigate in both camps.
Is that doable? Can people do that?
Absolutely is doable. You just have to, you can't play games. You got to be truthful. And you got to you stand on certain things, good governance, good foreign policy. There's a place for people to be able to navigate both. And you just got to be you got to tell the truth up front. You can't pander to either one of them, because if you lose the credibility, both will say you're not the right person.
And John King may have more competition in that Republican Senate primary. State Senator Colton Moore, a conservative who represents Northwest Georgia, teased a run on his Facebook page, saying he is, quote, strongly considering entering the race. Moore is known for clashing with both Democrats and Republicans under the Gold Dome. He was arrested at the Capitol earlier this year for trying to enter the House chamber while he was banned from the floor there, although House Speaker John Burns later lifted that ban.
Well, as 2025 congressional town halls go, the one hosted by Democratic Representative Hank Johnson Wednesday night in Lawrenceville, it was pretty standard fare. No disruptions, no heckling, no booing or loud protest. But those who attended, they did sound pretty frustrated.
All of them had to take an oath to adhere to our Constitution and obey the laws of the Constitution and keep our democracy intact. And they're not doing that.
And you're telling us we have to stay with this abusive boyfriend until November of next year. I don't understand.
The American people are polarized, confused, agitated, unsettled, and searching for answers and searching for truth. And the worst thing that can happen is during periods like this, people obey Republican leadership that's telling them don't hold town hall meetings. That's the worst thing that that can happen to the people.
So we do have a lot to talk about this morning with our Politics Roundtable. Today we have Fal Sabak, Assistant Vice President at McGuire Woods Consulting and former Executive Director of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus. Republican strategist Jen Ryan, the founder and CEO of Final Draft Communications. She previously served as Vice Chancellor of Communications for the University System of Georgia and Deputy Chief of Staff of Communications for Governor Nathan Deal. And making his Georgia Vote debut, we have Jeff Ami, who covers Georgia politics and state government for the Associated Press. He's been here in Atlanta since 2019. Let's start with voter frustration, because this is something we've seen in these town halls. Frustration not just on the Democratic side, but the Republican side. Fal, what do you think is at the core of voter frustration right now?
You know, I think the voters they cast their ballots in November. They expect to see change very quickly. And we all know that the system takes a lot longer for that change to happen. And I think when you kind of build that up a little bit, you get people who are frustrated. I'd
argue that change is happening very quickly on one side, though, and some people are expressing frustration over that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. Is it's either the change is happening either too quickly and they're not seeing the benefit of it, right? Mm-hmm. When you see the cuts, when you're seeing, the Doge thing that was happening, was moving so quickly, and then now it's, nobody knows what's going on. And so I think that you feel that frustration from both sides. And then on the Democratic side, I think you do feel some frustration from folks saying, are the Democrats standing up? Are they fighting back against President Trump's agenda and his allies in an effective manner? I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from.
Jen, for Republicans, when you see this kind of frustration at a Democrat's town hall, one of the things we hear from a lot of elected Democrats is they say, look, we hear the frustration from our constituents. We're the minority party. We only have so many levers of power to pull right now. As a Republican, do you hear that and think, great, this is good for us?
Well, let me give credit where it's due. I think that Hank Johnson did the right thing. It is tough, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, to hold a town hall and know that you're going to have constituents on either side and in the middle who aren't happy. So let me give credit where it's due for going and listening to the people. But I will say that this is part of democracy, right? Like, there were no disruptions. No one was taken out in handcuffs. No one was walking in keffiyehs screaming, free Palestine or doing something to take away from the debate that needed to happen. So I think that is only a good thing, whether you're Republican or Democrat. It was respectful, and like I said, I've got to give them credit for doing that.
And people are certainly getting out there, especially during these recesses. We are seeing these town halls. Jeff, I want to bring you in here. I mean, clearly we're here in Georgia, we have elections this year, midterms are next year. At the end of the day, it's about trust, it's about messaging. Are these politicians doing the right thing here?
I think the Democrats who are holding town halls in Georgia are doing the best they can to communicate a message. I think they're the people who are coming to these town halls are sort of core Democrats, and they are at some level really deeply freaked out right now. I know that when Jon Ossoff held his town hall a while back in Cobb County, he said, look, I don't have a magic button that I can press to do anything that I'm not already doing. But that's really, when you talk to Democrats who come to these events, what they really want is like, can you do something now before the 2026 elections?
Like she said, having to be with a, what did she say, abusive boyfriend?
And the answer that the Democrats are sort of largely telling them is like, there's not much I can do.
We have that PSC race coming up this summer, and then we have everything happening in 2026. Is 2025 and the PSC race, is that a really key priority for Democrats and maybe a bellwether of what you think might come after?
Yeah, I think that managing and launching a good statewide PSC race is going to lay the groundwork for the upcoming 2026 election, right? When you are out there talking to voters, I mean, even though it's PSC, you know, you're dealing with the utilities and whatnot. There are still differences between the conservatives and Democrats on this issue. And so I think laying the groundwork for, okay, these are the communities we're going to go talk to. These are the communities we're going to go engage in. Let's start laying the groundwork so that in 2026, the folks who are going to be running statewide can come in and kind of build off of that foundation that the PSC races are going to run.
Jen?
Wait, let me add, while I agree with my good friend, Sal, that the groundwork is important for any campaign, like good grassroots, laying the foundation for fundraising and an infrastructure it could be something that Democrats piggyback off of. I do not think that a very low turnout off-year statewide election is going to be a bellwether as much as I would like to see it. I have high hopes for Republicans in these seats, but I think it's too low turnout and probably not going to be reflective of the money and investment nationally that will probably be the case next year in 2026.
I think I'm going to agree with Jen here in that the Democrats who are running to challenge these Republicans are not coming out of the box very strongly yet. There's not a lot of indications that they are going to raise a lot of money or drive a strong message. So I'm not sure what we're going to be able to take away.
And Jeff, this always happens. We're running low on time. The good news, we'll continue this discussion right after the break. We'll see you then. She was arrested, detained, and now she says she lives in fear. 19-year-old Jimena Arias Cristobal talked with reporters just days after ICE released her from custody.
That's right. Arias Cristobal was brought to the U.S. as a child, but she is not a U.S. citizen. She was detained by ICE after a traffic stop, and the Dalton College student says that she no longer feels safe in her own community.
We feel as if we're more like targets in our community, and we're scared to go out, and we don't feel as comfortable as we used to before.
Now, we do know that Arias Cristobal is now out of custody on bond, but her immigration case is still pending. And one Republican state lawmaker who represents Dalton says that he wants a bipartisan approach to immigration reform. I spoke with Representative Casey Carpenter this week. Representative, what is the situation right now in Dalton? We know that this is a deep red district in the state of Georgia, but it also has a very large immigrant population. How have things been where you live?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is specific to Dalton. I think you're seeing it statewide. I just think you saw a community that wrapped their arms around a young lady that they know, and they know that's a valued member of our society up here. But it's happening all over the United States. Unfortunately, good people that have been here for a really long time are getting caught up in the deportation. When in reality we all thought it was going to be about hardened criminals and getting bad people out of the United States, which I think everybody supports.
What do you want to see done?
Yeah, I mean, so we put the petition out because the reality is over the last 20 years, Republicans and Democrats have kicked the can on immigration, and they use it as fear-mongering in elections, fundraising opportunities. And I'm saying, listen, let's solve the issue once and for all. But you can't do just one piece of it and solve it. You got to secure the border. You've got to get the bad people out of here. You've got to provide a pathway for people that have been here for a decade. And then you've got to speed the process up for people that are trying to get here.
We hear what you're saying. Some people scratch their heads at it. They see the R next to your name. They see Marjorie Taylor Greene. They see Donald Trump, and they say, well, this is what you all voted for.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't. I think the reality is most of us thought that we were voting for getting hardened criminals out of this country. I don't know that anybody's vote would change on what's occurring because there's 1,000 issues that the country's better off in than they would have been under a second term of Biden or Miss Harris. So it's unfortunately this particular issue is to me a tough one, and I think to most Republicans.
All right, we want to bring our panel back in to talk about this very important issue. Jen, I want to bring you in since you're a Republican strategist. To my understanding, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but Republican Casey Carpenter, he's the first Republican who has been public about this, who has spoken against this. Is there a path? And like in our extended interview, he says that this is a federal issue that trickles down to Georgia.
Right.
But is there a path for Republicans to get on board with this?
Well, look, I hope so. And I want to commend Representative Carpenter. I worked with him a little bit in the past, and he was one of the first Republican representatives from North Georgia who was doing bilingual text messaging, mail ads. I mean, he was really doing the Donald Trump model on outreach to the Hispanic community or African American community before Donald Trump was. So a lot of credit to him. And I frankly agree that I agree with him in that voters certainly voted for securing the border and getting trained Aragua or hardened criminals off the street, but nobody wants to see a 19-year-old woman who is going to college, trying to live here and do the best she can.
But can they do anything about it? Will they do anything about it?
It is a federal issue, and he's not wrong in that Republicans and Democrats have kicked the can down the road. And if there was an easy answer, then I would be shouting it from the rooftops. But I do commend him for his stance on this, and I do feel like a lot of Republicans, especially mothers, for one, they don't want to see this. So I'm with him on that.
Val, I want to bring you in a second, but first, Jeff, I want to get your thoughts on this. Is the immigration debate and this issue, is it going to continue to be the fault line and one of these major focal points of campaigns, just like we saw in 2024, as we move into this year and beyond?
I think it's definitely going to continue to be a really important issue. I think it's important to realize that Representative Carpenter, although I know him to be sincere in his beliefs, I think is pretty far on the left edge of his party. And I think there's a really deep well of support for large number of deportations among rank and file Republicans.
Of the right groups, which are violent.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think there are a lot of Republicans who want to see basically as many people who are not in the country legally as possible deported.
Val?
Yeah, Val.
Look, I mean, I think I would probably agree a little bit more with Jeff on this, and depending, right? Because I think when you have college students who are being deported, and we've all read the stories where other folks who are here undocumented but have been here since they were kids who are being deported now, their way of life is being threatened. I mean, that's something very concerning. And I think that a lot of, I read a quote that from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was saying that, this is very sad, but, they're here illegally. That's technically breaking the law. So I think a lot of those folks, a lot of the Republicans will look at that and say, well, yeah, you're here illegally. That's technically breaking the law. So, we should have to deport you.
Something that he said in our extended interview was that Republicans, I believe he was speaking to his party, need to stop looking at the letter next to their name.
Do you think that he represents the core of his party's belief here, or as you were saying?
I do not think that where Representative Carpenter is where the mainstream of Republicans are these days.
Can he speak to them?
Yeah, or could he change, or could he change minds?
I hope that it is possible that people can change their mind, but I am not sure that he is going to have the platform to get it done.
So much to discuss. As always, we get to the end of these and we have so much more to get through. Thank you all for being here. The Georgia Vote continues right after this.
Well, you can add another name to the 2026 campaign, and this one's not a surprise.
That is Barbara Rivera Holmes. She is the Georgia Department of Labor Commissioner and has been on the job about 2 months, appointed by Governor Brian Kemp. And she made it official this week. She is running for re-election to that post next year. Rivera Holmes is the state's first Latina constitutional officer. Before joining the Department of Labor, Rivera Holmes was president and CEO of the Albany Area Chamber of Commerce.
And she also spent time on the Board of Regents for the University System of Georgia, appointed by former Governor Nathan Deal. Rivera Holmes is a native of Puerto Rico. Well, up next, our voice of the voter is an Army veteran and pageant queen who's on a mission to empower women to defend themselves. Well, this week's Voice of the Voter takes us to Marietta. We meet with Army veteran Raquel Riley Thomas, and she's using her crown and her courage to empower women, sharing her story to promote self-defense in a world where safety isn't always guaranteed.
My name is Raquel Riley Thomas. I am the founder of Defend Riley, the initiative that talks about helping women and children get self-defense classes. Human trafficking is at its highest, as well as in Georgia itself, sexual assaults are on a rise.
Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is the most practical that you can use. If some situation happen, you gotta know how to defend yourself. Soft tissue here, ear, the groin. So we can go 1, 2, and then snap. 1, look, it's already eaten, look. Boom, elbow, boom, feel your eye. You see, it go right in the eye. Boom, yeah, right there.
What is Defend Riley?
Defend Riley started out of trauma in my home. Unfortunately, my mother in 2013 took her life by suicide. And I later found out that she had been assaulted, sexually assaulted. So years down the road, I took Taekwondo and I started to try to understand why I was in this class. I actually won Elite Queen of the World on May 10th. My initiative can be seen and heard across the world.
Do you think that the elected officials could have a role in the protection of women?
I think it's very important that we are able to sit down with them. I would like to get some conversations set up with not only the governor, but also the mayor and as many officials that I can, and tell them the reasons why I feel this is very important, but also show them, some of the strategies that we're doing.
What are you most concerned about right now?
I'm most concerned about that people are not taking this seriously. Let's not just talk about it. Let's actually do it. Let's actually get our daughters in self-defense classes. If we teach them now, we'll be able to protect them later.
What are you most optimistic about?
I'm optimistic about the fact that I have won this crown and that I now have a bigger voice, that I can get to more people to talk about how I feel about this. It's important. We have to do this. This is not an ask. This is a need.
And you can learn more about Defend Riley on our website, 11alive.com. Zach, watch out.
Yeah, well, I'm warned now. On that note, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We'll see you next Sunday at 11 for another edition of The Georgia Vote.